Yo, what's going on, you guys? Today we have 8 forgotten British people that changed the world for good. Hey man, I don't know who she is going to mention, but if you change the world for the good, come on, man, we gotta cover them. We gotta know about them. We can't forget about them, man. We can't forget about them. So if this is your first time on this channel, consider subscribing. We on the way to 10,000 subscribers. So please. We cover this type of stuff all the time. We look at different countries. We look at different cultures, the music, their food, the beautiful places, like, you know, the greenery that they have, all of that, man. We just love learning about different cultures. We just love learning about different places and stuff like that, man. So again, if this is your first time on this channel, subscribe and like this video so this video can reach more people. Without further ado, man, we're gonna get straight to it. Let's go.
This does not sound right. He was a detailed and determined doctor, and he just wasn't convinced. When we think of British people who changed the world, we often picture figures like Charles Darwin and Winston Churchill, and they're great, but they've had their time in the headlines.
Okay.
What about the Brits who remain largely unknown, despite their accomplishments that have made a huge impact on society, medicine, science, and really the world at large? From dinosaur fossils to Listerine to the jet engine itself, this video was all about the fascinating accomplishments of some pretty cool people from the UK who also deserve to be recognized. Number 1, Mary Anning. Imagine walking along the cliffs of the English seaside as a child only to stumble across creatures that hadn't walked on Earth for millions of years.
Okay.
That was Mary Anning's life. Born into a poor family in Dorset, she spent her days searching the rocky shores for fossils. She had zero formal education in science, yet she would be the one to go on to make some of the most groundbreaking discoveries in paleontology. At just 12 years old, Anning discovered the first complete ichthyosaurus skeleton, an ancient marine reptile. Over the years, she continued to make astonishing finds, including the first full plesiosaurus, and I say that like I've known before this video what a plesiosaurus was, and I didn't. But I do now, and she discovered it, and here's a picture. These discoveries challenged prevailing religious and scientific beliefs about the history of life on Earth. Her meticulous documentation and analysis of fossils laid the groundwork for the field of paleontology itself. But despite her contributions, the scientific community of the 19th century largely ignored her or stole her work. It was very male-dominated at the time, and she was kind of an outsider, so she never received the acclaim that she deserved. However, today, her legacy is starting to be recognized, and hopefully she serves as an inspiration to all of those 12-year-olds searching for fossils on the coast. Next on our list is Jon Snow, and not the one from the Game of Thrones. This Jon...
That's funny because that was the first thing that came to mind. That was amazing. That's amazing. That's funny. Jon Snow. I love you, Jon Snow.
1813, and it's a good thing he came along when he did, because in the 19th century, deadly cholera outbreaks were routinely sweeping through cities, killing thousands at a time. The prevailing belief was that diseases were spread through foul-smelling air. But John was like, this does not sound right. He was a detailed and determined doctor, and he just wasn't convinced.
Okay.
He believed that something else was at play. So when a particularly deadly outbreak struck London in 1854, he jumped into action with his map, starting to map cases of the disease in Soho. His investigation led him to something interesting. It was one single water pump on Broad Street. Now, he suspected that this was the source of the outbreak, and he was a little bit of a cowboy. He didn't wait for official approval. He basically removed the pump's handle, and suddenly, the epidemic subsided. Snow's groundbreaking use of data analysis and mapping revolutionized public health. His work proved that cholera was a waterborne disease, and this led to massive improvements in sanitation. Today, every time we respond to a pandemic or track the spread of diseases, we owe a debt to Jon Snow's good detective work. Number 3, Ada Lovelace. It's one thing to understand how technology works, but it's another to envision what it can become. Ada Lovelace, who was the daughter of the famous poet Lord Byron, possessed this mind that could just see possibilities in machines that other people couldn't imagine. Now, she worked alongside a man named Charles Babbage on his theoretical invention known as the analytical engine. It was basically an early model of a mechanical computer. While he focused on the mechanical workings, she went further, developing the first algorithm designed to be executed by a machine. In other words, she wrote the world's first computer program before computers even existed. What makes her contributions so cool is her foresight. She predicted that machines could one day compose music, create graphics, and do much more than simple calculations, which
amazing.
Obviously today we take for granted, but really wasn't fully realized at the time. Next on our list is a man named Frank. Now, before Frank Whittle, airplanes were slow, clunky machines with very limited range. But thanks to his groundbreaking invention, the jet engine, air travel would never be the same. He was a Royal Air Force officer and engineer, and he had the idea for jet propulsion in the 1920s. Unfortunately, the British government was like, no thanks, this seems impractical. However, he was stubborn and he persisted, working tirelessly to refine his concept and finally testing a working jet engine in 1941. The result was obviously a revolution in aviation. His jet engine not only changed warfare, which gave rise to fighter jets, but also transformed commercial travel. The ability to fly faster and further shrank the world, making international travel more affordable and accessible to millions. Today, nearly every modern aircraft relies on his invention and proves his impact on global transportation. Our next
Wow, that's just amazing, man. And thank you so much for this video, because I didn't know any of this. So I'm glad I'm learning new. That's what I'm saying. That's what this whole channel is about learning about different cultures, different people in different cultures, you know. I would have never known these things without this video. So thank you so much for that.
That's changed the world is a woman named Rosalind Franklin. To understand what she did, we have to know that the structure of DNA, which is the molecules that carry the genetic codes of living things, is one of the greatest scientific discoveries of all time. And the discovery of it is credited to James Watson and Francis Crick, but their work relied heavily on the research of Rosalind Franklin. She was an amazing chemist, and she used X-ray crystallography to capture what is known as photograph 51, an image that revealed DNA's iconic double helix structure. Her work really helped provide the missing piece that Watson and Crick needed, but she was largely excluded from the recognition they received, including the Nobel Prize. Franklin's contributions also extended beyond DNA. She conducted pioneering research on things like viruses, coal, and graphite, and today she is finally starting to be acknowledged as a key figure in the history of genetics.
Okay.
Next on my list is Octavia Hill. She wasn't just a social reformer. She was a visionary at the time who reshaped urban living in Britain. At a time when industrial cities were overcrowded, polluted, and devoid of greenery, Hill championed the idea that people needed access to green space.
Right.
She also believed that well-maintained housing was not a luxury, but a necessity for human well-being. She worked her whole life to preserve open spaces across the UK and ensuring that working-class community also had access to fresh air and recreational areas.
Okay.
She actually co-founded the National Trust in 1895. If you haven't heard, it's an organization dedicated to conserving historic sites and natural landscapes. And as I mentioned, beyond her environmental activism, Hill was a pioneer in social housing. She developed the model of affordable housing that combined fair rents with active management, creating healthier living environments for thousands. Next up,
Nah, we gotta know her. Hold on, I gotta remember that one. Sorry. Hold on. What was her name?
Hill. She was
Octavia Hill. So I gotta remember her because all that greenery. I love greenery, man. So she did a very good job with that. So we gotta give her props. Octavia Hill. Not to say the other people wasn't important, but you know, I'm just saying I love greenery. When I go somewhere, the first thing I look for is like how green the place is, man. If it's green, like you're talking about trees, grass, everything's just so green, man, I'm gonna fall in love with that place, man. I'm already knowing.
necessity for human well-being. She worked her whole life, founded the National Trust, and Hill was a pioneer in active management, creating healthier living environments for thousands. Next up, Dorothy Hodgkin.
Dorothy Hodgkin.
Dorothy Hodgkin's work in X-ray crystallography unlocked some of the greatest scientific achievements in medicine. For instance, her groundbreaking analysis of penicillin's structure in the 1940s paved the way for the mass production of antibiotics, which really transformed the world's fight against bacterial infections.
Okay.
Later on, she would discover the structure of vitamin B12, which plays a really crucial role in treating anemia, which previously had been a fatal disease. But her most celebrated achievement actually comes when she mapped the molecular structure of insulin, revolutionizing diabetes treatment. Her discoveries really provided the scientific foundation for life-saving medications that are still used today.
That's
and for
amazing.
good reason, she received the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1964. And last on my list
Congratulations to
is a
her.
man named Joseph Lister.
Joseph
Before him,
Lister.
surgery could be a death sentence. The idea that invisible germs could cause deadly infections was not widely accepted or known, and basic surgical procedures could lead to fatal complications just because the instruments and environments were unclean. Lister was inspired by the concept of germ theory, and he introduced antiseptic techniques that transform medicine today. If you're following along in your head, yes, he is the one related to Listerine. He pioneered the use of carbolic acid to sterilize surgical instruments, wounds, and even operating theaters. His methods drastically reduced post-surgical infections and mortality rates and turned surgery into more of a life-saving procedure rather than an incredibly high-risk one at all times. His work also laid the foundation for modern antiseptic techniques, influencing everything from hospital hygiene to the development of sterile surgical techniques that remain in use today. Now, if you have other suggestions of maybe some more unknown Brits that have changed the world, please leave your comments below. Let me know what you thought and what you learned from this video. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah, man, this was a very good video. Like I said, I would have never known. Yeah, I would have never known these people until I watched this video. So thank you so much for this video, man. Hey, thank you guys for watching with me. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.